Hey there everyone, and welcome to the long-awaited question and answer video that I said I was going to do, like 2 months ago, right after the trailer for Le Fantabulous Game V1.0 dropped. Yeah, it's been a while. I don't know how many people saw my blog post yesterday at the time of recording this, and hopefully also at the time of uploading, we'll see. And then also the community post I made on YouTube, but basically, the light has been out in my apartment, and I don't know where my spare light bulb is, and I have been too busy and distracted and honestly lazy to go out to Home Depot or something and go get a new one, so I've kind of just been waiting until a time when my schedule aligns with the window and I'm allowed to get a lot of natural light in here. So today's pretty good in that regard. So I can finally do this question and answer video. And before we get rolling though, there's a couple things I want to say. Number one, I'm kind of just doing this off the cuff, not really scripted at all, so I'll be looking down here to just see my notes. That's the closest thing to a script I have. And also to actually read the questions. And number two, I'd like to address the big thing that happened yesterday, along with those blog posts for those who aren't aware. Le Fantabulous Game is no longer Le Fantabulous Game. I talk about it a lot in the blog post, and if you want more reasons as to why, you can check it out there, but basically there's just been a lot of misconceptions about the game. People thinking that Le Fantabulous Game and The Fantabulous Game were the same thing, or that Le Fantabulous Game was still going to be an egg-like, stuff like that. And yeah, it was just getting to the point that I felt like it was going to affect the game's, success and the Kickstarter success and stuff like that. And in all honesty, I only really went with Le Fantabulous Game for the brand recognition, and when people didn't really like that it was still Le Fantabulous Game, or when those who did like it got the wrong idea from it, it was just, there was no real reason. So, point is, the new name for the game is Fantaria, The Quest for Sausage. The logo's on screen right now, it should be at least. And yeah, that's the name for the game. I know it's sort of going to be something to get used to, but I'll be uploading a new trailer within the next week or so that fixes that and is sort of updated with some of the new shaders and stuff, and blah 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 blah. Point is, new name for the game. It's Fantaria now, not Le Fantabulous Game. Le Fantabulous Game is now officially just the egg-like I released, 6 years ago. So anyways, with that out of the way, let's hop into the question and answer proper. So, the big question I was getting a lot, which ties into the whole name change thing, was people asking what's happening with The Fantabulous Game. And to clarify here, The Fantabulous Game was the Dark Souls third-person, platformer combat hybrid that I was working on for about 3.5 years, I'd say. It essentially just got to the point where it was going to be too much work for me to actually finish on my own. I had put in, 3.5 years of work, hadn't even finished the first level, hadn't even gotten it into a demo-ready state, and it was just way too big of a project for me to tackle on my own. So I took not all the assets, but a lot of the assets from that one, and pivoted it to be a remake of Le Fantabulous Game, which, now named Fantaria, as I mentioned before, is a collect-a-thon first-person shooter hybrid. So there's going to be platformer elements and collect-a-thon elements. In terms of its differences with The Fantabulous Game, I mean, there's a ton. It's first person, it's not like Dark Souls inspired, the death mechanics are just a game over screen. And in terms of its differences from Le Fantabulous Game itself, Fantaria is more linear. It's going to be, you go through level by level, and you can return to old levels to grab things you missed and stuff, but it's not going to be like hub-based where you have 3 different paths you can go at any time. I want to make a really cohesive first-person shooter experience as my first foray into, actually making a game. And so far, so good. In terms of some of the plot things, it's similar to Le Fantabulous Game, but different. The main difference is you're no longer collecting sausages for Friend Woman. You're collecting them for yourself. Friend Woman is now going to be an actual character who fights alongside you throughout the game. Or, well, not all the time throughout the game, but she'll show up in boss battles and in some levels and stuff. That's the plan anyways. As for what happens, Catboy, or specifically Catboy's egg, crashes onto the island of Fantaria, and he hatches from it. And slowly, after finding his first couple sausages and realizing the power that they have, he stumbles into the whole Sphere Friend Shamrock conflict and gets roped into it via the promise of more sausages. So yeah, that's the basic plot. Still ironing out the details. The demo's not going to really tackle any of that. You're going to start halfway through the fighting place level, so... yeah, that's the difference between The Fantabulous Game and Le Fantabulous Game, or as it's now known, Fantaria. So, moving on to the next question, the Epic Derp Games asks, or says, yes, the game is back, baby. Will you still be developing the Fantabulous game, and this is just to hold us over? So, I kind of touched on it in the last question, but the Fantabulous game is not entirely dead. I put in way too much work on it for me to just completely throw it out wholesale. It's officially on hiatus, and I'll probably go back to it in a sort of semi-reimagined form in the future. Maybe I'll make it more linear. Maybe I'll make the collectathon elements, like, more proper, where you're not going to the level to beat it, you're going to the level to collect things and then move on. The core gameplay, though, is probably going to stay the same. I got a lot of inspiration and ideas that are just sort of churning around in my subconscious from playing Sekiro, which came out recently, and that's sort of doing that whole, like, platformer Dark Souls hybrid done really well. And also the name of the Fantabulous game is going to be changed to coincide with Fantaria's new name. As for why it's on hiatus, it's just the story of the... Well, like I said before, it was going to be way too much work to do. But on top of that, the story of the universe developed to the point that Fantaria's story is kind of necessary for the Fantabulous game, or whatever it's going to end up being called, for its story to make sense. So, yeah, I had to kind of just get the prequel done so that everything in the sequel could actually, you know, be engaging and logical. And the actual development and release date of the Fantabulous game is super up in the air. I'd like to do some more bite-sized projects before I ever go back to the Fantabulous game. Assuming Le Fantabulous game is successful, I'd like to get a bigger team going so that I can actually sort of see it to fruition the way I want to see it done. And there's, like, in terms of these bite-sized projects that I'd like to do, there's a bunch of stuff. There's Fantaria DLC, which would be really awesome if the game's successful. I'd like to do some sort of expansions. Right now, the plan for it is just to get the game out, and I'm not like trying to do like day one DLC or anything ridiculous like that. But I'm gonna see how the game is successful based on what gets done from the Kickstarter funds, which I'll get to later. And depending on what happens there and its success, I'd be totally open to making more expansions. So point is, that's something I might do. I'd also like to make a sort of Mario Party-styled game set in the Fantabulous universe. And there's also plenty of non-Fantabulous projects that I'd like to do as well. Speaking of that, though, that brings us to our next question by Android27. Will you make any other projects, like maybe some sort of RPG game? And the answer to that is a resounding yes. I have a tons and tons of games planned. And I've sort of been developing this whole, like, huge, extended universe almost since I was very little, like 5 years old. So I would really like to go back, or not go back, I would really like to start working on that. Le Fantabulous game was an amazing accident that sort of, like, got me into the scene, but it was never really the game I wanted to make, which, again, I'll talk about why I made Le Fantabulous game later on. I'm just going through the questions one by one, but, yeah, so that's the plan there. The name change to Le Fantabulous game being turned into Fantaria, however, also really helps, like, tie it into this sort of expanded universe a lot more. So one of the plans, to actually answer the question directly, is an RPG, like you asked. My sort of idea is to blend the Fire Emblem style of tactical map combat with traditional, like, JRPG Final Fantasy style turn-based fights. It's all up here right now. I have no prototypes or anything done, and it's still easily a couple years from even having a working demo out, but, yeah, I'd like to do something like that. I'd probably also make a small Fantabulous-themed game in order to, in order to test it out. So, yeah, and I'm gonna be doing a lot of other things like that, too, where I make a Fantabulous game in order to test things. Moving on to the next question from HighBlast629, he says, Fantabuloso, will there be lore? Yes, again, as I mentioned before, there's this whole, like, expanded universe that Fantaria and the Fantabulous game can both fit into really easily, especially with the new name change. And they've grown to have their own, like I said before, the Fantabulous game can't exist without Fantaria existing, because there's so much lore packed into the Fantabulous game that it needs Fantaria to set it up. And it's also a lot better than the past lore I originally had planned for Le Fantabulous game v0.9, or v1.0, like the one I was going to make like 4 years ago. Some of the, like, funny past removed lore parts I had were, the final boss was going to actually be an adult form of Catboy's species, so it was going to be like this weird stick figure thing, since remember, this was back when Catboy had the wheels for legs and stuff. And that weird stick figure thing was actually planned to be that thing behind the door in the prison that was making all the static sounds. So that's it was going to be a part of like an optional return to the prison where you can come back to the level and see that this thing busted out and murdered everything. And then in the end, once you've given Friend Woman all the sausages and stuff, you're able to go through the sausage gate and then fight an adult version of it. So that's out. That's not happening. I guess indirect spoilers in a way. I've spoiled one thing that will not be happening in Fantaria. But then a much stupider idea I had was that I toyed with like edgy twists to mock all the other games, especially at the time, which had like all these like really deep, scary twists to try to make games seem more like an art form, which there's not inherently anything wrong with it. I especially don't think there is from a more adult perspective. I was, 17 at the time. But the big one that I had was that the whole thing was going to be a kid's dying dream, and then you see the hospital room at the end, and it's so sad. But it was never like a serious actual lore thing. So anyways, I can't talk a whole lot about the new current lore because I want it all to be a sort of surprise and fun adventure, but I can talk about some of it. So it takes place, the whole game, it's the thing in the trailer actually, it takes place on this planet called Hara, and it's orbiting a solitary sun. And there's no humans or humanesque species on the planet at this point, and especially not in Fantaria, with the one obvious exception of Friend Woman. As for why, you'll find out. Catboy arrives in an egg, so he's actually... That scene you see at the beginning of the trailer is actually him hatching and him being born. So he arrives in an egg from this weird unspecified location in space, and he hatches, and you start playing as him. And then the last little thing that I'll give you guys is that the Fantabula is actually a sort of an alternate dimension in this universe now. So there's Fantaria, and then there's the Fantabula, which is almost... It's not really a shadow world, since it's not like it's going to be a mirror image of everything in Fantaria, but it's the alternate universe where all the eggs live instead of sphere friends. So yeah, there's your little lore dump for now, and stay tuned for more when the actual game comes out. Moving on, Angel Gaunterman asks, is it going to be for Steam? Also, is it going to be for free or for purchase? Because I'm willing to pay. You put so much work into it. Well, thank you, Angel. I wish part of the reason I changed the name was because a lot of people aren't expecting it to be paid, and I want to be kind of upfront that this is a paid product, and it's not going to be released for free like other egg-likes, since it's not an egg-like. So anyways, it's planned to be on Steam, and my plan is for it to release after the development on the Kickstarter. It's going to release in early access once all the content is done and the game is present and all the super bad bugs are ironed out. It's going to be in early access for about a month or two, just so I can iron out the last chunks of bugs that, my small test team can't really necessarily get all of them. So I want to make sure that it's as bug-free as possible before I properly release it. And it's also going to be about balancing the gameplay and stuff. But the point is, the entire content is going to be done. And I just want to release the best quality product that we at A-Cart Games, that's the sort of studio that we work in. Again, I'm going to get to who we is later. That I want to release the best product we can, so that's what the early access is going to be for. I also would like to release the game on DRM-free alternatives after the early access period. It's kind of hard to do an early access thing on things that aren't Steam, because Steam has so much built-in support for it. But I can say for sure that I want to release DRM-free versions after early access is done. I'm not really sure which DRM-free options I would go for. The ideas I have right now are the Humble Store and itch.io, but I don't know. We'll have to see what the whole indie gaming landscape is like at that point. And I might do an early access thing on these DRM-free platforms. I have no idea. We'll see. So that brings us to the actual question of what the price is going to be. The Kickstarter, which I'll talk about later again, I keep saying that, is you'll be able to get the game for $15 on the Kickstarter, or you can get the deluxe edition for $25. These are both going to be at least $5 cheaper than the actual game's release price. So the actual game's going to be $20, the deluxe version is going to be $30. And the deluxe version is going to have the soundtrack and a bunch of wallpapers and just a bunch of extra goodies with it. So that's going to be the difference. And the soundtrack is amazing. That's what's playing right now, or one track from it at least. maybe I'll do multiple. Who knows? We'll find out. So yeah, soundtrack for $10. Game or sound deluxe edition is going to be $10 more than the actual game, which is currently planned to be $20 on release and $15 in Kickstarter. During the early access period, it's going to have about a 10% discount, so it'll be like $18. Again, it all kind of comes down to how much content gets funded via stretch goals on the Kickstarter, since that's going to kind of impact, how much work goes into the final product and how much I feel like the game deserves. So yeah, that's pretty much everything to do with the pricing right now. We'll get to the Kickstarter later, though. So moving on, we have two people, Notorious Jester and Zay Diglett, asking about what the idea is for Le Fantabulous game and where Shamrocks came from as the main villain. These aren't the same question, but they're really closely related, so I'm just going to talk about them both at the same time. So essentially, egg-likes were a thing. They're less of a thing now, but they were a huge thing, especially on Vinesauce. And I just got really tired of all the lazy attention grabs that were just plaguing the Vinesauce community at the time. Stuff like, specifically, Weed Chase and Alien Jump. I think the Fantastic Game and Fantastic Game 1.fun themselves were actually really cool, fun products. But I did feel at the time that Fantastic Near was kind of, due to the attention that they were getting, affecting the Vinesauce community in a negative way. So, I got pissed, being a little edgy 16, 17-year-old spiteful little boy. I set out to parody it and make a higher quality product in less time. And I just kind of took the Fantastic Game and made a bootleg of it. So it was, instead of the Fantastic Game, it was Le Fantabulous Game. The reason I chose Le was because it was an overused and stale meme at the time, and these days it's just like weird and cringe and off-putting, which is part of why I changed the name to Fantaria. And as for why Shamrocks are Shamrocks, it's actually very simple. It's related to this whole thing. When that email I sent to Vinny in the original draft, I called Fantastic Near a sham. But I decided that calling him a sham, or calling them a sham, was not going to be it wasn't enough for the whole, persona I was putting on. So instead I made it Shamrock, because that's just a mutation of sham. And then I took that word and just said, okay, now the villains are Shamrocks, because Shamrock is bad. So that's where it came from. It's a pretty simple story, and I think that's what it was, at least. I could be wrong, but that's what I recall. Point is, the email was actually one of the first things I worked on for V0.8, so that was pretty fun. Moving on, Mick Guy asks, how long will the game be? Like an hour or two? Definitely longer. This is a big part of why I have chosen to make Le Fantabulous Game into Fantaria instead, because it's not an egg-like, it's not just an hour or two freebie experience, it's a game with a capital G. The current plan is for there to be about 1 hour per, main level, 1 hour of gameplay, with a skilled player playing at a normal pace, and not necessarily going for 100% completion. Player skill will, of course, greatly impact how long the game takes to play. Especially for bosses. A boss could hypothetically get beaten first try by a good player, or it could take hours and hours and hours by a player who's not so good, or if the boss is just overtuned. The current testers for the demo, which is structurally complete, I just have to polish it up and add in sausage mechanics, they estimated it at about 40 minutes to beat, so... and that's also about 50% of the current level. So it's about on track with what I'm planning, maybe a little longer. We'll see. It's kind of up in the air, but that's what I'm shooting for. The plan is for there to be 3 primary levels per race of villains. So the Shamrocks, the Signs, and the Eggs are all going to get 3 primary levels. In between each of the primary levels, there's going to be a little transition level, which is only going to be 10 minutes just to smooth the difference between the fighty place and then the prison. There's going to be this path through the mountain caves, and then you emerge and you go to the prison, and that's going to be a little 10-minute level with some bonus fun little mechanics. Additionally, there's going to be a Kickstarter stretch goal to add 3 secret levels, one for each race. So I'm not sure exactly where they're going to be put, but there's going to be secret levels if that Kickstarter goal is funded. So a little quick back of the napkin calculation, there's going to be 9 levels at about 1 hour each, and then 6 transition levels at 10 minutes each, so that's 10 hours, and then there's going to be some extra levels like the tutorial and then the stuff that's behind the sausage gate. We could probably add an hour or 2 to that, so overall it's going to be about 11, 12, somewhere in that range, a little over 10 hours. And it could be potentially much longer based on player skill or if someone's going for 100% completion. But it could also be potentially a lot shorter if someone is trying to speedrun. I'm actually factoring in speedrunning to the level design and the boss design, so I want to really make, since speedrunning was a surprisingly big thing for the original Le Fantabulous game, I really want to make speedrunning a big thing for Fantaria. Or not necessarily a big thing, but I want to make it easy to do. Not easy to get good. You guys know what I'm saying. One take. So moving on, we have an egg-like question. Am very much, or Ringak, it's very small in this picture I have, says, am very much excited for the release of new old game. Game in finished or very much closely? Is game money game or no money game? How many money must sacrifice for game? Are make devlog on all secret and not front scenes? So, kind of hard to decipher this one. I think what he's asking is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ringak, down in the comments, he's excited for the game, asking if it's finished. It is not finished. It's not close to finished. The demo is close to finished and will be releasing along with the Kickstarter in the very, very near future. As for if the game's going to cost money, I talked about that before. $15 on Kickstarter, at least $20 once it actually comes out, maybe more depending on what gets funded with stretch goals. And devlog on secret and not front scenes. Currently, I'm not planning on releasing any sort of development shots or discussions of secret content. I really want to have the game's content be fun and surprising for players who join. However, what I would like to do is anytime I finish a level, release just a quick little spotlight showing off some of the landmarks of that level. Obviously, this doesn't apply if the secret level Kickstarter goal gets funded, because I'm not going to reveal the secret levels or where the secret levels are or anything like that. And as for when the game's going to come out, which I don't know why I have this in my notes since you didn't... I guess you did if you asked if it was close to finished. I would estimate the game's release at Q1 of 2021. So like sometime in spring 2021 is the current plan or estimate. That could get pushed back, again, depending on the stretch goals. Some of these stretch goals are really extensive, and I'd really like to release a lot of them along with the base game, but we'll see. So I'm pretty sure I answered the question here, but again, correct me if I'm wrong, and feel free to ask clarifying stuff later on. So moving on, Scarfcat has 5 questions. So we're gonna go through these pretty quick. So question number 1: is this replacing the Fantabulous game? And if so, how much of the planned content from the Fantabulous game is going to get used in this? Also, what content? So I answered the first part of that question at the beginning, but a decent amount of TFG's content is going to be used in Fantaria, especially in terms of boss plans, which is actually part of why I moved and stopped the Fantabulous game in favor of Fantaria. Every time I would go and design a boss, I would be designing it with first-person shooter mechanics in mind, even though it was not a first-person shooter. So, it was just, I was having this weird internal confliction that wasn't letting me design bosses to a degree that would actually be fun, since a first-person shooter boss in a game that's not based on shooting is not going to be a fun time. Next up, since the 3 icons there in the top right represent the abilities you have, are those like 3 slots you can interchange with other abilities, or do you just unlock more over the course of the game? So the ability system is actually going to be fairly fleshed out between the sausages and the actual abilities. So it's going to be sort of 2 types of abilities. There's going to be abilities and enhancements. So the abilities are active skills that give Catboy unique things he can do, ranging from standard to unique. Currently implemented in the demo or in the trailer are a dodge, a tattle, and mind control. So the tattle is kind of like a tattle. I said those out of order. The tattle is like a tattle in like Paper Mario or something. You look at an enemy, you press the button, and then your currently equipped sphere friend will tell you about that enemy. Or if you don't have one equipped, Catboy is just going to give you his basic thoughts on the enemy. The dodge is a dodge. You have iframes, and you kind of just zoop in a direction. You have 3 charges, and they slowly charge over time. And then mind control, you stun an enemy, and then you can mind control them, and they'll fight on your side until they die. So those are the 3 that are currently implemented in the demo right now. However, there's more I want to add, and I'm actually going to be subbing out the mind control in favor of a sort of flashbang stun ability. And there's going to be a lot more abilities than that. There's going to be stuff like a double jump, or a knockback grenade, or remote mines, night vision. And there's going to be some more fun things like a grappling hook. That's the main idea I have right now, but there's going to be more than just a grappling hook. There's going to be more fun ones, trust me. So players can only equip up to 3 abilities at one time, and they have to pick and choose. They also have to equip them back in home sausage, so you can't, like, you have to pick almost pick your build and, like, roll with what you really find fun, since I want them all to be viable to different players and in different ways. And this is unlike upgrading with sausages, which is the whole enhancements thing that I mentioned beforehand. So weapons and abilities will both have sausage upgrades. There's going to be basic ones like, oh, this increases the damage of this weapon by 10%, or its knockback by 30%, or who knows. But then there's going to be more fun ones that are sort of traded to the unique weapon or the unique ability. So with the mind control, for example, there will be upgrades that let you control 2 or even 3 enemies at a single time. And with the weapons, it's going to be stuff like Sphere Friend Yellow gets Slight Homing, or Sphere Friend Blue gets, like, the icicles explode, dealing extra damage in a very small radius. And getting every upgrade at once is not going to be possible in a single playthrough. You're going to have to pick and choose what you want to get. However, I am going to have respeccing available in Home Sausage, so players don't just get locked into one choice, even if they discover, hey, I actually like this other later weapon a lot more. So moving on to your third question, how big is the dev team and who are they? So, there's 3 of us. It's me, Viv, and Skandre. And we are doing the core dev, the UI assets, and, core dev, music, and certain UI assets, respectively. I'm still doing the heart of the work, like the main, like, programming, modeling, animation, etc., etc., but I'm now doing it full-time due to the fact that I'm graduated, and I've been very fortunate to have the savings to be able to do this the past couple months, but I do need to launch a Kickstarter in order to sustain this for the rest of the game's development. So yeah, that's the team. Question number 4, will Boycap be in the game? Boycap's not currently planned because since this is a prequel, Boycap doesn't actually exist in the universe yet. He has not come into being, or been born, or however you want to say it. And that's the same for the other 2 Capfolk of the Fantabulous game. Fantabulous game, Capboy, and Capgirl also aren't present and will not be in Fantaria. And finally, what exactly is the progression structure? Of course, the main goal is to defeat the 3 kings, but I'm curious about this other stuff like the weapons, if you can take down the kings in any order, etc., etc. So I touched on this before when I talked about how the game's going to be a lot more linear. So the main levels are going to be long and include a number of sub-levels. The demo, again, I touched on this before, the demo is going to have the 3rd sub-level of the fighting place, which is also going to be probably the longest one of the 3. So there's the 3 levels are the base of the fighting place, the interior of the fighting place, and then the summit of the fighting place's mountain, Mount Sfonk. So you go through these 3 levels almost like the acts in a Sonic game, like Green Hill Zone Act 1 and 2. It's fighting place, acts 1, 2, 3. And they're going to be mostly linear, but there's going to be non-linear segments. For example, the main fighting place area, you have to go and defeat 4 groups of Shamrocks, each representing one of the specific races of Shamrock, in order to get 4 keys to open the entrance into the fighting place interior. The transition levels are going to be a lot shorter, 10 or 20 minutes each, and are just going to be little bridges. I talked about those before. And then there's going to be the secret levels, which are going to be about the size of the main levels if they get funded on the Kickstarter, and they'll just be sort of like tangents that are a lot harder than the main game, but give you big rewards. Yeah, I think that pretty much answers your question. It's just going to be linear and based around going back to Home Sausage occasionally. So, then we're moving on. I jotted down all those questions earlier. These last 2 questions I just jotted down today. We're almost done. Papa Pop-Tart asks, what inspired Catboy's rather creepy design in late Fantabulous game V1.0, or Fantaria as it is now? And this is related to my general design philosophy between V0.9 and then the newly renamed Fantaria. You can't use copyrighted memes in an actual product, and I'm making an actual product. And as a result, it's very hard to actually replicate the goofy, weird, abstract feel that everyone loves about the good egg likes, since a lot of that comes down to using memes or using copyrighted material in funny, like, remixy ways, and I'm sure it's probably qualified under fair use, but I also don't think it's going to hold up in court if I try to sell something for $25 that uses Steven Seagal's likeness, for example. So instead, I sort of focused on taking all that like really wacky and abstract and silly stuff, like Catboy's wheel legs or the again the Steven Seagal bridge, or Steven Seagal, and I sort of just pivoted it all to be, instead of being like all goofy and wacky and silly, to be kind of weird and off-putting and creepy. So you have this really goofy exterior of the world with this sort of sinister shell, and there's stuff like that just like throughout the game. Since you have the goofy shamrocks, except now you can blow them up and their guts will fly everywhere and they'll bleed, etc., etc. There's the Catboy spider legs. The sausages are going to have some weird elements. Like you can see on the screen right now, these sausage statues are going to be the fast travel system and how you get to and from home sausage, instead of just jumping into a black void. So yeah, just a goofy shell with a sinister interior, and that's basically what I'm going for with the new Cowboy design, though I guess he's a bit more like explicitly sinister. And then finally, No Scope Felix asks, hey, would you actually consider a console release if it sells well? So consoles and other operating systems are things that I would like to do if the game is successful. However, there's a lot of overhead to support them just starting out. For example, we just tried to test a Mac build and it's completely screwed up. All the graphics are just shot. The core gameplay is still there, but the developer console is just screaming about errors. I'm pretty sure it runs inefficiently. It's going to be too much work to support Mac on top of PC, on top of just making the game in the first place. So I can't even imagine how much harder it'd be to support an actual console, especially one that I don't have necessarily. So if I do go multi-platform, if the game's successful enough to go multi-platform, I'll be targeting Mac and Linux first. From there, if it's also still successful enough, I will move on to target all the consoles. I'll probably focus on Switch first, since it's the least like hardware powerful one, and that should hopefully make it easier to just upscale to the PS4 and Xbox One. But again, this is all just if it's successful enough. So yeah, that's about it for the questions. I'm gonna finish off this video by just talking about the new Kickstarter plan and just some closing comments. So, due to delays relating to the name change, it is no longer gonna be launching in April, like I said in the late Fantaria game trailer. It's now gonna be, I'm shooting for the first week of May. It should be like pretty early in May when it actually comes out. Like I said, the demo is playable, unlike how it ever was before when I said the demo was coming out, you know, a little over a year ago. There's a product, I just need to polish it so that I can actually say, hey, give me $25,000, which is going to be the Kickstarter's base goal. And like I've talked about, there's stretch goals going all the way up to 80,000. These range from the very first one is going to be a local multiplayer arena, so you can play couch deathmatch with your friends, to more weapons and abilities, alternate weapons for every single weapon, and new melee weapons, stuff like that. Another cool one that I want to do is Fantabulous mode. Now that it's not called the Fantabulous game, I can actually use Fantabulous in the game without it being just a weird title drop. So Fantabulous mode is going to be an extra mode, or an extra hard mode with a Master Quest style revamp of all the maps, and new highly reworked, highly challenging versions of all the bosses. I think that's the 50k stretch goal. I need to check my notes, but it's somewhere around there. And then there's going to be more stuff too. Like the secret levels, and I'd like to do online multiplayer. That's the very highest stretch goal, since that's a lot of extra overhead. But yeah, lots of stretch goals, and stay tuned for the actual Kickstarter where you get to see them and back it. Reward tiers are going to be stuff like, it's the same as I've talked about with the Fantabulous game in the past. It's going to be stuff like design a sphere dog, design a sphere friend who will randomly appear, a deluxe version of the game, and I'm still, the reward tiers are probably the one thing that I haven't quite ironed out fully with the Kickstarter, so I can't talk about them a whole lot. But it's going to be stuff along those lines. I'm trying to avoid physical stuff just so it's not too overwhelming to actually manage, like, sending it out to everyone. But we'll see. I'm going to be away from my main workstation the next couple days, so I'll be spending a lot of time working on the Kickstarter then. So yeah, that's about it for all the important information. Sorry again about how long this took. I'm really impressed I did this in 2 takes. I know I said 1 take earlier, but I just had a huge brain fart about halfway through, so 2 takes of a video. Again, sorry I'm kind of rambling. I've done this before, but I really wanted to get this out for you guys. If I missed your questions, or if you have any new ones as a result of the stuff I've talked about in this video, Feel free to come by the Discord or send me a message on Twitter or however you want to contact me. I'm not going to be making another video to like discuss all of these. The next video I'm going to be releasing is either going to be some wacky glitch video again or the new trailer for Fantaria, The Quest for Sausage. So, yeah, the links to the Discord and Twitter and stuff are down in the description. So I think that just about does it. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys soon with hopefully the trailer and the demo for the Kickstarter, and of course the Kickstarter itself. Peace out, have a good one.